In Imola, beneath the surface of an apparently normal weekend, much more is happening than what the cameras show. The RB21 has updates copied from Ferrari, McLaren changed strategy at the last minute, and the SF25, defined by many as a fatherless project, could have a modification already this weekend. And then there's Hamilton, first Grand Prix of Italy in red, so much emotion. Behind the smile hides an uncomfortable truth: Ferrari is still far away. And he knows it. If you like the videos, put like to support me, and now let's start right away. Red Bull has only one goal: to continue winning with the RB21 and Max Verstappen. At the moment, it seems that the main interest is directed towards the driver's title, while the constructors one seems further away, especially with such a competitive McLaren and two solid drivers. In fact, at Red Bull, it is mainly Max who manages to squeeze the maximum potential out of the single-seater, even when technically it would not be enough. The Imola circuit is one of the Dutchman's favorites. He knows that overtaking here is difficult, so the only strategy is to achieve a perfect qualification to start in front. That's why he spent several days in the factory working on the simulator and preparing for the weekend as best as he could. The track on the Sant'Ena requires precision, and the RB21 has shown some limitations on the curbs. Especially when the setup is not yet optimized, too many oscillations can cause time loss on the curve exit. Red Bull has not remained still. As already anticipated in April, it has brought new aerodynamic updates to try to remain competitive. The group, led by Pierre Wache, has particularly worked on the central part of the car, introducing changes designed to improve overall behavior and increase the useful window for adjustments. So, an evolutionary package arrives in Imola that has been discussed for weeks, born with the idea of improving efficiency and reducing aerodynamic resistance. One of the most visible interventions is the new design of the side air intakes, which now follow the style already seen on the Ferrari SF25. The edge of the opening has been redesigned to separate the mouth from the upper profile, which has now become a real aerodynamic element, similar to the one adopted 2 seasons ago on the red one. This technical choice is used to better manage the airflow that flows along the sides, protecting it from lateral turbulence and directing it in a cleaner way. In addition, this modification should also have positive effects in the lower area, acting on the static pressure field. Another visible detail is the small vertical appendage located just below the new air intake. Its function is to guide the flow towards the lower part of the belly, further optimizing the distribution of aerodynamic flows in that area. All of this falls within a precise strategy, adapting the RB21 to stay in the race, even in a season where the competition, particularly McLaren, is stepping up the bar significantly. Ferrari arrives at Imola with the clear goal of making up ground, but the road is still long, and in the meantime, the challenge with McLaren is becoming increasingly intense, and every detail can make a difference. However, I do have a small advantage. I use Surfshark, a virtual private network that allows me to access exclusive Formula 1 content from all over the world. I can follow Formula 1 on Swiss television, but there's more. With Surfshark, you can browse safely on any network, block annoying ads and malware, use it on unlimited devices, and try it risk-free thanks to the 30-day money-back guarantee. I'll leave the link here in the description. And if you use the discount code at checkout, you get an extra 4 months of Surfshark virtual private network. Ferrari is still chasing, but at least you can be on top even online with Surfshark. Ferrari arrives at Imola with the will to relaunch itself. Both Hamilton and Leclerc aim for a solid weekend on an old-style track where there is no margin for error. Narrow escape routes, gravel and limited spaces make every slip potentially decisive. Looking at the images collected from the pit lane, it is possible to notice the technical choices made on the rear axle. The rear wing mounted at Imola reveals a clear strategy. Surprisingly, McLaren also opted for a similar setup, giving up a lighter setting to instead aim for a medium aerodynamic load, just like Ferrari. This is curious, as forecasts indicated a lighter configuration to take advantage of speed on the straight, an area where McLaren is not at the top. Analyzing the details, the MCL39 has a slightly more pronounced leading edge, while on the Ferrari there is a second flap with greater incidence at the extremities to balance the vertical thrust. The aerodynamic structure chosen by Maranello is an updated version recently introduced, which should help stabilize the rear of the car, an area that has caused several headaches so far. The fundamental problem concerns the overall balance, which is still far from being ideal. The lack of rotation at the front complicates the definition of the setup, making it particularly sensitive. Despite this, the SF25 still manages to maintain a good speed in the straight sections, even though its overall aerodynamic efficiency is lower than that of the Red Bull. Most of the curves are tackled at medium or low speed, often uphill or exiting from sharp braking. Traction is therefore essential to be able to transfer all the power to the ground without skidding. Curves like Tamburello, Tosa, Acque Minerali, Variante Alta and Rivazza severely test the single-seater in these situations. And precisely to best absorb high curbs, irregular surfaces, a softer setup is needed both at the front and at the rear. This helps the car to better follow the track profile and ensures greater stability, an aspect on which Ferrari hopes to have a small advantage. The rear axle is set even softer to ensure traction in restarts, especially on uphill stretches. The ground clearance is also adjusted slightly upwards to avoid damage to the underbody on the more bumpy sections, like the high variant. A key element concerns the behavior of the shock absorbers. They must respond quickly to every load transfer. When braking, it's essential to load the front well, while when accelerating, power must be distributed smoothly to the rear. This is to avoid understeer when entering a curve and to improve the exit. In particular, at the most critical points of the track, the differentials work becomes crucial in managing traction. The settings change depending on the curve and the team works in advance to adapt them to each phase. We already know that it's not easy to overtake at Imola. Last year, the first 7 drivers maintained their respective positions until the finish line. For this reason, qualifying and strategic management are crucial. Pirelli has chosen to introduce the softer compounds C4, C5 and the brand new C6. This last one will be especially useful for the single lap thanks to its ability to quickly reach the ideal temperature range. An opportunity for Ferrari, which this year has struggled to warm up the tires in the first sectors. However, the C6 does not seem suitable for the race unless in special situations like a safety car or a very long stint. The thermal degradation and the risk of graining are high, especially on a track that puts a lot of stress on the rear axle. In addition to strategy, some overtaking opportunities could be exploited under braking, particularly at points like Tosa, Acque Minerali and Rivazza. These braking points also represent an opportunity to recharge energy. The accumulated energy can then be released on the main straight, where aerodynamic efficiency also counts. Last year, right at this point, Ferrari had made a mistake in their approach, mismanaging the release of the hybrid as Leclerc had pointed out. To avoid a similar mistake, this year the operation of the power unit 066-15 has been reviewed, especially in the management of the hybrid. The aim is to optimize the roughly 160 horsepower from the electric system in qualifying and the race. The new settings will be tested from the free practice sessions, also in relation to the updated technical package brought for 2025. Frederic Vasseur has spoken about the Ferrari situation, but he avoided going into detail about the rear suspension. When the World Championship arrives in Europe, major updates are usually expected, and for Ferrari, it's an opportunity not to be wasted. The distance from McLaren is evident, and moreover, Red Bull and Mercedes often seem to have something extra in the race pace. To stay in the race, the prancing horse must react. The current championship is unique as it's the final one under the existing wing car regulations, which the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile has already decided to discontinue. The cars will be revolutionized in shape and size. The power units will have a new balance between the thermal engine and the hybrid part, and even the aerodynamic rules will undergo a total reset. The entire technical system will be reviewed under the supervision of Nicolas Tombazis, a familiar face also at Ferrari. For the teams, this means managing 2 projects at the same time, the current one to continue to develop and the completely new one for next year. It's a complicated challenge, and making the wrong choices today can mean starting at a disadvantage for the entire new regulatory cycle. And it's exactly this risk that Ferrari wants to avoid. Giving up in advance would be like transmitting distrust to the entire team, and it's a mistake that Vasseur does not intend to make. According to the French manager, letting go in 2025 could harm not only the short-term results, but also the spirit and motivation of the group in view of the new project. That's why the Italian team will continue to push until the end. As far as regarding the work in view of 2026, Vasseur is aware that much of the current knowledge about aerodynamics will soon become obsolete. The new regulation will completely change fans, wings and geometries, making the technical knowledge accumulated over these years of little use. The discussion is different for the mechanical part. On this front, something can be maintained. The suspensions, for example, are among the elements that could offer technical continuity, even though the tires and overall dimensions of the single-seaters will change. And this is where we return to the initial question, the rear suspension of the SF25. To the direct question, Vasseur did not confirm any changes. He did not even imply that there are changes coming. He simply reminded that all teams are evaluating and working on mechanical components, as is normal. But on his part, no official confirmation, neither on the specifications nor on possible evolutions, nothing that clearly indicates an intervention on the pushrod or on other elements of the rear area. Work on the 2026 project has already started, but this does not mean giving up on the current season. In fact, Vasseur himself emphasizes how important it is to demonstrate consistency and ambition in front of everyone, especially the drivers and engineers who must give their all at every race. Also, because in terms of performance, Ferrari often finds itself just a few tenths from the top positions, 3 tenths from the pole, only 1 from third place on the grid. Distances that can be bridged if the right approach is maintained. Vasseur, when asked about this, wanted to clarify the situation. When Sarah joined the team, the SF25 project was already almost completely defined. The fundamental choices, from weight distribution to the car's wheelbase, had already been approved. In fact, the car that is on the track today does not bear his signature, nor that of Enrico Cardile, who had left the technical post months earlier. In a certain sense, this Ferrari is orphaned from a real project father. Despite this, the work group that followed the developments of the project is essentially the same one that built the single-seaters of the last 3 seasons. For Vasseur, this is not a problem, but rather an opportunity. If something didn't work in the 2025 project, it doesn't mean that the technical structure needs to be revolutionized. The important thing is to be aware of where to intervene and how to improve. Even winning teams need to continually evolve so as not to lose ground, and the same principle applies to Ferrari. The impression that is too often had at the end of race weekends is that we have not been able to bring out all the potential of the car. And if you don't know the real limit of the car precisely, it's premature to think about stopping development. Every race is still an opportunity to grow, learn and correct. Lewis Hamilton is preparing for his first Italian Grand Prix as a Ferrari driver, and he does it with a smile, letting the experience gained in almost 20 years of Formula 1 show. Even though he is aware that the start of the season has not been the brightest, Hamilton has managed to shift the focus onto the emotions. He arrived in Italy with serenity. The return to Italy, this time wearing the Ferrari red, has a deep meaning for him. Despite the suggestive atmosphere, Hamilton remained lucid when talking about the current situation of the team. He repeated that he feels no pressure, but asked fans to be patient. He is aware that it will take time to bring the Reds back to the top, even though he admits he is the first to lack patience. The passion of the fans is evident and the desire to do well is strong, but the road to reach the level of the best stables will require work and consistency. The British driver appeared more relaxed than at other recent times. He acknowledged that there is still room for improvement on the SF25 and hopes that the Imola weekend can mark a first step in the right direction. There are no shortage of problems, but one in particular, not specified, is at the center of the team's attention. When asked if it was about the rear suspension, he preferred to gloss over it with a half smile. They will work between Imola and Barcelona to try to unlock the still hidden potential of the car. Hamilton explained that he is following the plan established with the team and that he will try the new package in the simulator before the Grand Prix. Spain when the new rules on the front wing will come into effect. He then admitted that beating McLaren will be extremely difficult given their technical superiority, but not impossible. After all, they have already beaten them once. More realistically, according to him, is to try to get closer. Mercedes and Red Bull, even though the current optimal use window for Ferrari is too narrow, and this makes the setup very delicate to center. Despite the difficulties, he remains optimistic, is working in harmony with the team, and knows that there is still a lot to build before really thinking about victory. For the World Championship, however, it is more realistic. In his opinion, when you are over 100 points behind the top after just a quarter of the season and there is a dominant single-seater in front, it is correct to admit that the race for the title is out of reach. But in Formula 1, everything can change, a fact Lewis is well aware of deep down. Despite the significant gap in the standings from McLaren, Mercedes continues to believe in the possibility of improvement. After 6 races, the Constructors' Championship gap is a staggering 105 points. The first technical package of the season was expected right at the start of the European phase of the championship, and it arrived on time. The interventions carried out on the single-seater are 3 and touch key areas. The first concerns the front wing, where the second element has been revised now with a wider chord, while the last two flaps maintain a rather unloaded configuration. This is an evolution designed to better balance the aerodynamic load and adapt to the characteristics of the Imola circuit. A second change affected the front suspension system, specifically the rear arm of the upper triangle. The new fairing at the height of the attachment to the body has a wing shape with a pronounced upward tilt, a clear sign of the attempt to direct airflows along the body with greater precision. This solution, although not new, has already been adopted by Ferrari on the SF2525. Completing the package, the engine hood has been modified. The new profile, revised in the upper part, includes a series of air vents designed to ensure more effective cooling in line with the high temperatures expected for the weekend. An apparently minor modification, but crucial to improve efficiency and thermal management in race conditions. All these interventions confirm Mercedes' determination not to give up. There is awareness that the gap from the top will not be filled in a few races, but the technical basis on which to work appears more promising than in the recent past. Alpine is at the center of attention for a major turnaround at the top. After the resignation of Oliver Oakes, Flavio took over the reins of the team. News that marks the return of the former Italian manager to the operational leadership of the Enstone structure, right where he had already left a mark in the 90S and 2000 Seio.
However, the situation presents a rather curious aspect.
Despite Briatore assuming all decision-making responsibilities within the team, he cannot officially be designated as team principal. The reason is technical and bureaucratic. Not being a direct employee of the team, but an external consultant appointed by Renault, Briatore cannot appear in the official Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile documents as the team manager for Formula 1. The reference figure registered for regulatory purposes will instead be Dave Greenwood, the current director of track operations. In fact, he will be the one appearing in the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile documents as the team's representative on race weekends, starting precisely from Imola. The statement released by the team explicitly clarifies that Greenwood will have a formal role in administrative and sporting management, but it will be Briatore who has the final say on all strategic decisions. In short, at the operational level, the command is entrusted to the former patron of Benetton and Renault, even though officially he cannot carry the title of team principal. Meanwhile, on the sporting front, the lineup has also undergone changes. Franco Colapinto will take the place of Jack Doohan in a change that was in the air since the winter break. The Argentine, initially announced as the third driver, had long been considered the main candidate to step into the single-seater in the event of restructuring. The leadership change has only sped up an ongoing process. All of this fits into a complex context for Alpine, with the aim of regaining technical solidity and concrete results. The return of Briatore, albeit in fact and not in name, represents a signal strong, and his impact will be closely watched by the entire paddock. If you liked the video, give it a like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next ones. Let me know what you think in the comments and see you next time.